The man 2 seats to the left slips off the bench without anyone touching him, and the gaze locks for a moment, unable to organize what's in front of it. It's not fainting, not sleep. It's a body giving in to something without form, and while the mind reaches for an explanation, a woman ahead presses her hands into her eyes in a way that doesn't look voluntary. The blink comes on its own, and the eyes are already burning. The air inside the car hasn't changed in smell, hasn't changed in color, but something in it has shifted, and the most disturbing realization rises slowly. Like water filling a space, the problem isn't one person, it's everything around, and the exposure has already gone on long enough that believing it's still possible to be outside of it no longer makes sense. Before we go any further, take a second, subscribe, leave a like, and stay with me because what happens next changes everything. Haruki Tanaka, 41, an accountant at a mid-sized firm in Kasumigaseki, the administrative heart of Tokyo. Every morning begins at 6:20. A shower before the family wakes. Coffee prepared while the city is still dark. Leaving home at 7:10 to catch the Hibiya line at Minami Senju. A commute that has existed for 9 years with such consistency it no longer feels like a choice. It simply happens, like breathing, like a heartbeat. That morning, March 20th, 1995, follows the same script. The coffee slightly stronger than usual because of a new package, a detail noticed, registered, and forgotten in less than a minute, the navy blue tie, the briefcase a little heavier with documents meant to be reviewed throughout the day, and the sky outside holding that pale gray tone of early spring that in Tokyo is neither cold nor warm, just present. The Minami Senju platform moves with the expected rhythm of a Monday rush hour, orderly lines, closed expressions not from irritation but from inward focus, the collective body language of people with a destination and a schedule, no margin to lose either, the usual spot in line, second position from the yellow marking, and when the train arrives, boarding happens without looking around, because after 9 years the dimensions of the car are already known through the weight of the body moving. Within it, standing near the middle door, right hand on the rail, the briefcase resting between the feet, stations pass in a memorized sequence. Minami Senju, Minowa, Iria, Ueno, each marked by the sound of doors, the flow of passengers, the shift in pressure as the train dips and rises, thoughts drifting to the report due before lunch, mentally rehearsing the order of tasks, the kind of automatic planning that runs while conscious attention is elsewhere. Somewhere between Akihabara and Kodemicho, the man is noticed for the first time, seated about 3 meters away, dark gray suit, briefcase on his lap, head slightly lowered. What stands out isn't a specific movement, but a quality, something in the posture that doesn't match how tired people sit in a subway car. The tension in his shoulders is different, higher, contained, as if something is being held inside. The gaze moves away, the way it always does when something isn't yours to deal with. In Tokyo, not looking is a form of courtesy, a rule learned long enough ago to become automatic, the map above the doors, eyes closing for a few seconds, letting the motion of the train take over, and in that small gap, in that suspended moment of attention, the car is already beginning to change in a way that still has no name. The first thing to appear is in the eyes, a mild irritation, the kind usually blamed on the dry air of the underground subway, the fatigue of the morning, the fluorescent light that is never exactly kind of vision, a few blinks, the index finger rubbing the corner of the right eye, and the irritation stays with that persistence that starts asking for more attention than anyone wants to give. Along with it, a light pressure behind the eyes, not pain yet, just presence, the feeling of something that should not be there. When the gaze lifts again, the man in the gray suit has changed position, now leaning forward, elbows on his knees, head lowered in a way that no longer looks like fatigue, it looks like effort, the effort of someone trying to keep balance from the inside out, and the woman to the right, almost invisible before in the edge of attention, now has her hands pressed against her face, fingers covering her eyes, with a stiffness that doesn't belong to an ordinary headache. The count happens without meaning to, 3 people visibly altered in the same car at the same time. Logic tries to build separate explanations for each one, but there is something in the simultaneity that resists being broken apart. 3 people, the same space, the same air, the same moment, and in the middle of it, the eyes are already burning while nausea begins to rise at the edge of the stomach with the treacherous subtlety of things that are only beginning. The train stops at Kodemicho and the doors open. For 1 second, the idea of stepping out appears, but the logic of routine arrives faster. 4 stations still remain before Kasumigaseki. There is a 9 o'clock meeting, and the feeling in the eyes is probably just the dry, recirculated air of the car. The doors close, the train begins moving again, and in the dark reflection of the opposite window there is a different expression now. An alertness in the face that was not there at the moment of boarding. That is when the bag appears on the floor, Resting against the wall beneath the window on the opposite side, an ordinary plastic bag, the kind that could be holding anything, with a wet stain spreading slowly across the linoleum, alone, no visible owner, no one nearby who looks as if they placed it there. The gaze stays on it for a few seconds and then returns to the man in the gray suit, now completely still in his seat, breathing visible but silent, and a connection that is not yet a complete thought begins to take shape. The nausea rises another level, not dramatically, not with enough force to demand an immediate reaction, but enough to make one thing clear: it is not anxiety, not suggestion, not the strong coffee from earlier that morning. It is physiological, it is real, and it keeps joining the irritation in the eyes and the pressure in the head in a way the body is already organizing as a message while the mind is still trying to catch up. The train reaches Tsukiji Station and the exit happens, not through full deliberation, not through a complete thought formed in language, but because the body makes the decision before the mind can follow. And it's possible that this fraction of a second between impulse and analysis was the most important decision ever made without its weight being understood at the time. The briefcase is pulled from the floor, the still open doors are crossed, and the first step onto the platform comes with the air of the underground station that, after the inside of that car, feels comparatively clean. The symptoms don't disappear, the eyes are still burning, the nausea remains, the slight disorientation is still there, but something shifts in the curve, a sense of containment instead of escalation, as if removing the source isn't a cure, but is something. For a moment the body stays still on the platform, hand against the wall rail, letting the train leave, watching through the moving windows the faces that were left behind. Approaching the station worker comes with the attempt to explain what was seen, and the difficulty appears immediately. There is no precise vocabulary. How do you describe a train car where people begin to collapse at the same time, without visible cause, using words that belong to an ordinary morning? The explanation comes out fragmented: people getting sick, something leaking on the floor, the air feeling wrong. The worker listens with professional attention, brings the radio to his face, and, in the way he responds, it's already clear this is not the first report of its kind that morning. Sirens begin to emerge at street level, still distant but layered, overlapping, with that frequency that communicates scale before any explanation is given. The climb up the stairs leads to the surface, and what appears outside is the same event left underground, now spread across the city, people coming out of other entrances with red eyes and unstable movement, staff trying to organize flow without enough information to understand what they are organizing, the collective language of not knowing, more unsettling than any defined danger. The call to the office happens almost automatically. The voice comes out different, shorter, carrying a slight lack of air. The message is simple: not going to make it, maybe not at all. On the other end, a confirmation, a take care that holds more weight than it seems, and the body remains standing on the sidewalk in front of Tsukiji Station while the city begins to understand, in real time and in fragments, that this is not an ordinary morning. A woman exits the next train completely disoriented and drops to her knees at the edge of the platform. The movement back down the stairs happens without thought. Her weight is held while a worker calls for help over the radio. She is conscious, but confused, her eyes reacting without control. Her breathing carrying the same strained quality seen earlier in the man in the gray suit. And now, for the first time, it begins to form as a symptom of something that still has no name here, but that the professionals arriving already recognize immediately. Kasumigaseki, the station where the descent should have happened, begins to emerge as the visible epicenter of what is unfolding. This is where the affected lines converge, where the emergency system is trying to organize itself with resources that were never designed for something like this. There is no direct presence there, but the information arrives in fragments, through the radio of a passing worker, through conversations from people coming out of other stations carrying the same expression brought from the train, through the constant sound of sirens that do not fade. The word sarin appears almost by accident, spoken quietly by a man in a white coat organizing an improvised treatment area on the sidewalk. Its exact meaning doesn't fully exist yet, but the context carries weight: the coat, the tone, the precision with which the word is spoken, the kind of precision that belongs to something with a defined protocol, and that alone is enough for it to settle differently from the other words circulating that morning. Gas had already formed as a thought earlier, but sarin is something else, more specific, heavier, as if it carries an entire history within it, even without being understood. Bodies begin to appear on the sidewalk in numbers the mind struggles to keep up with. That familiar delay when reality is too large to be processed at the speed it unfolds. These are not just people getting sick. These are people reaching the limit of what the nervous system can sustain when something interferes with the signals that keep the body functioning. Some are being treated with an urgency that communicates severity without needing translation. Movement continues among them with the briefcase still in hand, eyes still burning, helping where there is something to hold, something to signal, operating on impulse because impulse is faster than any plan. Hospitals in the area begin to overload in real time, ambulances arriving and leaving in shorter and shorter cycles, demand spreading while capacity reaches its limits. Someone mentions it isn't just the Hibiya line, that the same has happened on other lines in other cars across different points in the network, coordinated to reach the highest number of people at the hour when Tokyo's subway carries its greatest concentration. The information settles as both logic and horror at once. What seemed localized reveals structure, an architecture of destruction distributed across the entire city. Transport to the hospital happens in an emergency van running continuous routes in the back seat for others from different train cars, each carrying variations of the same set of symptoms. Almost no one speaks. There is a specific kind of silence there, not the silence of discomfort, but the silence of those still inside the event, still trying to arrange in sequence something the body experienced before the mind had time to register. At the hospital, the diagnosis comes in long words, explained with the patience of people who know technical detail matters less than practical clarity. There is an agent in the body that interfered with the nervous system. The level is mild to moderate, treatment is already being administered, recovery is expected. The body remains lying on a hallway stretcher for hours, monitored at regular intervals, and during that time the mind begins to do the work that had been delayed by urgency, understanding what happened, what didn't, and the difference between the two. 13 people died that day. More than 1,000 required medical attention. Dozens were left with permanent effects of varying intensity, vision damage, neurological disruption, trauma that no system was prepared to absorb at that scale. Aum Shinrikyo released sarin across 5 subway lines in Tokyo simultaneously. Train members pierced plastic bags with the tip of an umbrella and exited at the next stations, leaving behind a substance that continued to evaporate while the trains moved, with passengers who had no way of knowing what they were breathing. Release comes in the early afternoon, along with follow-up instructions and a list of symptoms to monitor in the coming days. Rachel is waiting outside, and on her face there is that quiet effort to hold everything in place, the kind of control that follows hours of fear trying not to collapse into relief. The answer comes before the question, "It's fine," and the response is simply an acknowledgement that it was expected. The ride home happens in silence in the back of a taxi. Hands meet without either person consciously deciding to reach out. In the days that follow, details of the attack emerge in layers through the news, each layer adding dimension to something experienced without full understanding at the time. Stories surface of those who tried to help unconscious passengers and absorbed higher doses by approaching the bags, of stations where the collapse was most severe, of names and faces of those who did not return home that night, people who made the same automatic decision that morning to step into a train without knowing that entering and leaving now carried entirely different weight. The Tokyo subway reopens within days, and the return happens the following week, not because fear is gone, but because the city depends on it, because routine pulls stronger than fear when fear is not constantly fed. Something has changed, not visibly, not in a way that stops movement, but in how that space is inhabited, a different awareness, the understanding that the air inside a closed train car is shared with everyone around, and that this sharing is not neutral, not guaranteed, not invisible the way it once seemed. There is something that remains from that day, something difficult to explain to anyone who wasn't there, the sense that a decision was made. Stepping off at Tsukiji without full awareness that it was a decision, and that its consequences only became clear later at a safe distance from the moment. It isn't heroism, it isn't dramatic survival. It is simply the realization that the instinct that moved the body out of the train before the mind could form the reasoning is the closest thing to a silent miracle ever experienced. Something that arrived without warning, without signal, just a step toward the door taken before it was ever consciously chosen.